The following program is brought to you by Jack Miller.
It's Down to Business with Jack Miller. Forget what they teach you in school. This is real life. Not Wall Street, but Main Street. Our guests will answer your questions and provide you with valuable information. Stay tuned and join in the conversation. Follow us on Facebook at Jack Miller Down to Business or on Twitter at H.Jack Miller 1.
Hello, everyone. This is Jack Miller. I'm here with my main man and my good buddy, Todd Cohen. Todd, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jack. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Todd, I'm always doing good. I'm speaking to you. You always put a smile on my face. My wife didn't lock me out. She's happy. My kids are happy. I woke up. What else is to complain about? We have a super guest today. I'm really excited about him because I know no matter what you hear about the news, there's a lot of companies hurting, and we have an expert on turnarounds and workouts and guys who's going to help companies. So I'm doing good. No complaints.
That's great. I mean, look, when you first told me we were going to be talking about workouts today, I'm not going to lie. I went right toward the gym. I started thinking about, getting the bench press out and Pilates. This is a business show, so I guess we're talking.
You want to make that tight, perfect body of yours even tighter and more perfect, right?
So chiseled, the Adonis that is Todd Cohen.
Different,
my friend.
Different type of workout. Anyway, let's bring Dave on. I think he's on the phone. Dave, you with us?
Yes, I am.
Dave, I appreciate you joining us. Everyone, we have on the phone a super guy by the name of Dave Johnson. And Dave, I'm going to introduce you, but I'm really going to let you tell the audience about what you do at ACM Partners. You're, I think, one of the founders and principal there.
Absolutely.
Why don't you tell everyone, give everyone like a minute or two introduction about ACM and what you spend your time doing, and then we have some real good questions for you.
Sure. The simplest way to think about what I do is I am the person who gets called to fix companies. I go into companies generally as an interim manager. That could be anything from an interim CEO, interim CFO, interim COO, or what's called the Chief Restructuring Officer. And I drive performance improvement. I'm essentially a personal trainer for companies. I take companies that are losing money, companies whose lenders don't trust them anymore, companies whose investors have written them off, and I turn them around.
So you play in a sandbox that I play in a little bit. How did you get, because I'm always fascinated with people in this business, how did you get in the what I call the restructuring or the turnaround business?
Well, it's funny. I started off my career as an entrepreneur. So when I was in college, I started a company, and I worked on it for a few years. It was a good idea, but it didn't end up working out. But ever since that experience, I've wanted to be on the side of working with companies, giving them a second chance, helping companies that had a good idea but not the right management, or hit a bump in the road and deserved to exist but needed a second bite at the apple. I wanted to help companies get that second chance. And after business school, I found my way into the industry, and I haven't looked back.
Wow. So how is what you do different than, say, a management consultant or, say, like a private equity fund to buy a company and do that sort of restructuring themselves from inside?
Absolutely. Great question. So the difference between the type of work that I do and what, say, a management consultant will do is a management consultant, there's a joke, a management consultant will borrow your watch to tell you what time it is. A turnaround or restructuring guy is going to go in there, guy or girl, is going to go in there and fix the company. I'm not getting hired to tell my clients how messed up they are. I'm getting hired to fix it. So I'm actually driving the change. I'm actually implementing the change that's allowing the company to succeed. And in terms of how I work with private equity firms, rather than being at odds with them, I tend to work very closely with private equity firms. When they have an investment that is failing, often it's a private equity-backed company that will contact me recognizing that they need help and recognizing that they need the subject matter expertise that I can bring to the table to fix it. Private equity guys are great at structuring deals. Generally, when things go wrong, they need someone who's got the operational experience to go in and turn things around.
So you bring up operational experience. So, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But first, what type of companies, do you have like a specialty, or what type of companies or industries do you work and focus on? Or is it everything?
I'm industry agnostic, so I focus on everything. Reason being, I work with middle market companies. My sweet spot is companies from 10 to 250 million in revenue. And in my experience, those companies, when they run into problems, those are company-specific problems rather than it's mainly the industry. So I get in, I quickly get smart about the dynamics of that industry, and I dig in. And I've generated good results for my clients, so they haven't had any complaints.
So as part of your structuring, are you focusing on the management, on the efficiencies, on revenue, on things of that nature, as well as the balance sheet items?
Absolutely. The good company, bad balance sheet, in my experience, are largely past. The companies that have bad balance sheets generally have other problems. So you've got to fix the operational efficiencies. You've got to figure out a way for the company to get more profitable, and then you've got to sweat more cash out of every dollar and start tightening the reins. Then you've got to fix the balance sheet. It's all tied together.
Do people such as you help with like the federal government, who I clearly think needs working out in many ways?
Dave Johnson for president, right? That's what we need, a workout guy.
Right.
The skill set is the same, but I think in terms of the dynamism and not getting dragged into the morass of politics, I'll stay in the middle market and leave that to someone else.
Well, right. Obviously, the U.S. government probably doesn't fall under your purvey of 10 million to 250 million in revenues. But, I mean, could there be someone who swims in the big pool doing what you do that could actually get in there, roll up his sleeves, and possibly try and help? Because we clearly need it.
Well, we've already seen it in certain manifestations. I believe Steve Ratner was very influential in working with the Obama administration to save the auto industry.
Right.
Back in the early days of the last recession, Steve had a robust private equity background and brought that and his restructuring skills to bear in a way that was very beneficial for those of us who were out there trying to save automotive suppliers and wondering if there was going to be an ecosystem left. So I think you do see that people are applying this skill set across the board. It's just, for me, I like my corner of the sandbox.
I don't blame you. Stay away from the government. So let me ask you a couple specific questions, and then I want to talk about energy and a bunch of other stuff. When do you think the right time, or when should a business call somebody like you? Because in my experience, and I play a little bit in the extent that you do, that companies are always calling me way too late. And as I sort of need them to call me, I always say, look, you call me when you're thinking about calling the ambulance. Don't call me when you're on the table and they're putting the paddles in on you. But that's usually when they call me. So when's the optimum time, you think, for a company when they're under stress to call somebody like you?
Jack, I think you and I face the same problem. Since ACM Partners was founded, I think we've had 35, 40 clients, and every one I wish had called me sooner. Now, you can drive a good outcome even in a bad situation, but where you get to is dependent a little bit on where you start. I think that on average, I am called 6 to 9 months later than I wish I was. That's not to say that you can't do a lot of good, but I always wish clients would call sooner. So
the message is, because that's sort of my message, I didn't know if it was different for you, but my always message is sooner rather than later.
Right. Always sooner. When you get that first inkling that I don't know how to fix this, pick up the phone that day.
I got you. No, I agree.
For you to get business, is it you sort of waiting for referrals or people to call you, or do you go out and actively or proactively sort of drum up your own business? And if so, how do you go about doing that?
So I certainly reach out with attorneys, accountants, investment bankers, other trusted advisors, but I don't do a lot of actual selling. At the end of the day, someone needs to recognize that they need help and see the value in what I do. So generally speaking, how I'll actually get a client is I will get a phone call. One of a small number of people will say, David, I know this person. He or she is going to give you a call. Here's the story. I'll get a call from that person, and it's kind of a blind date, but everyone's pushing both of us to get together very quickly because we've got to fix the problem. And as long as we can work together, we go forward and learn a lot about each other pretty fast.
What are your experiences? How much do you find the stakeholders, whether it be the board, the family that owns the company, the guy who's calling you, how much is he more of an obstacle sometimes or a hindrance to the turnaround?
You'll see that a lot. It very much depends. In family-owned companies, when the family has taken a step back, it's not as challenging. When one of the family members is CEO, and part of the solution is the CEO needs to leave, or at least to take a big step back, that can be a big challenge.
I understand.
I always tell my clients, the best way to guarantee a good outcome, to guarantee the optimal outcome, is minimize the number of sacred cows. Minimize the number of places that you're going to tell me I can't go or I can't look. If you hire me and say there are half a dozen places you can't fire this guy, you can't move that, well, okay, I'll do my best, but that's going to be hard. If you go in and say, Dave, just fix it, it's going to be a lot better for everyone.
I hear you. Do you find, and I'm sure you do, because I think it's the same with me, that when they call in you, that you actually wind up saving the money? And sometimes I know with me that companies look as it's an expense, and I prove time and time again, and I suspect you do too, that you're really a saver. So whatever they spend on you, they're going to reap double, triple, 10 times, 20 times that in either balance sheet savings or cost savings or income increases. Are you finding the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. There's not a single long-term engagement I've had where I haven't paid for myself many times over. It's hard for management teams to get their mind around it because it's not the way they think, but it's absolutely the case that given my skill set, you give me enough authority, and I'm going to pay for myself many times over.
No, I agree 100%. Do you also get involved, or are you looking at it from a 360 degree, so you're also working on, for example, bringing in new cash, equity, debt, selling part of the company, or really a holistic approach, take the whole company and deal with it?
So my job is to get rid of the crisis and manage the situation down to the point where you don't need me anymore. So very often there will be a sale process, some type of asset divestiture, new capital will come in, and I will be with the company throughout that process.
So you're the quarterback on that, the new equity, the debt, the sale, whatever it may be.
That's right.
Gotcha. You know, Dave, we got to take a commercial break, and I feel bad because I have so many more questions for you, and I know Todd does too. Before we take a commercial break, can you give out your contact or your website, your contact information? I know you have great blogs, great videos out there. I would encourage everyone to check them out on YouTube, but maybe give it your contact information, then we'll take a quick couple-minute commercial break.
Absolutely. Phone number is 312-505-7238. Email is david@acm-partners.com, and website is www.acm-partners.com.
Thank you, Dave. Everyone, stick with us for, I think, about 2.5, 3 minutes. We'll be right back. Dave, stay tight. Todd, I know you're staying tight. We will be back, everyone, with more good information. I want to talk to Dave about the energy sector. I want to talk to him about the economy and what's going on in the real world, because forget what you hear on the news. You talk to a guy like Dave, and he'll tell you what's going on in the real world. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.
Don't turn that dial. We will be right back.
Are you tired of dealing with unreliable banks and brokers who charge upfront fees and never deliver on their promises? You don't have to. Gelt Financial Corporation has been in business since 1989 and offers a stated income loan program for non-owner-occupied residential and commercial real estate investors. No tax returns required. What are you waiting for? Call Gelt Financial right now at 561-221-0900. Again, that's 561-221-0900. 561-221-0900.
Did you invest in a non-liquid real estate partnership? Do you want and need liquidity? There's finally an answer. Quick Liquidity is a direct buyer of real estate minority interest and tenants in common investments across the country. To find out if we would buy your non-liquid investment, call us at 561-221-0881 or visit us at quickliquidity.com. That's quickliquidity.com.
Welcome back to It's Down to Business with Jack Miller. Follow us on Facebook at Jack Miller Down to Business or on Twitter at H.Jack Miller 1.
Hello, everyone. This is Jack Miller again with my main man, Todd Cohen, and we are really lucky to have Dave Johnson today, the founding partner at ACM Partners. I said partners twice, but that's what it is, I guess. And Dave, you're in Chicago, correct?
Yes, that's right.
What a renaissance Chicago's had the past 10 years. It's unbelievable there.
Oh, it's been incredible. The city's come alive.
Beautiful city, except probably this time of year. Not so great, but
That's true.
9 months out of the year, I love it.
So Dave, one of our recurring themes on this show, and Jack will definitely concur, is sort of like finding the right people, finding the right team to put around you, which is so essential for any kind of company. So, A, can you tell our listeners sort of how your team is comprised and how you go about finding new talent for your team?
Well, it's funny. My team is essentially me. I started my firm with a former business school classmate, but now it's down to me. I am the change agent that gets brought into a company. So I build a new team for every client. And when I leave, my client is better off. The way I approach that is, first and foremost, I look to promote from within. I'm a huge fan of what I call battlefield promotions. Do I have a talented, hungry person in a lower level who, given the chance, can rise to the challenge? 9 times out of 10 you do, and you promote that person, you coach, you mentor them, you might make a few sporadic outside hires, and you gradually build a team that starts to gel, and by the time I leave 3 to 6 months later, the company is humming and performing in a way that it never was before.
Dave, I want to talk about the economy in general. I certainly want to talk about the energy sector, but what's your feeling on the economy in general? You know, forget I don't believe what they tell you in the news, because I'm talking to people all day long, and so are you. What's the word on the street? How are businesses doing? Are they hurting? Are they thriving? What's going on?
Jack, is that this recovery was missing in action in the middle market. We didn't see it. So those companies, and I deal with companies that are $10 to $250 million in sales, those companies didn't see much of a bump. And what you saw was the lenders recovered faster than the broader economy. So there was a lot of money sloshing around, which frankly has led to a lot of bad investments. But the situation on the ground outside of energy did not considerably improve over the last few years. It went from bad to okay. It never got great. And now what I'm starting to see from my clients, from my contacts, is it's starting to slip right back to bad again. We never had good times.
Yeah, I'm finding that too. I'm finding a lot of my clients are hurting. There may be banks lending money, but they're not lending it to my clients. In fact, a lot of the banks are calling my clients' loans. I have client after client after client who are approaching me and saying, and they're paying their loans on time, and the banks are calling them and putting the banks under tremendous pressure. I don't know if you're experiencing that as well.
That's absolutely right. What I think is happening is the lending market has fundamentally changed, and the role banks play has changed. Banks are rebalancing their portfolios, and they're playing a meta game with risk management that just doesn't make sense for the family business companies actually on the ground floor. You've got, like you said, companies that are paying their bills, that have been good clients for 20 years, and one day a new edict comes down and the bank doesn't want any loan under $10 million outstanding, and 50 companies get thrown out the door.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that all the time.
No, that's what I see. And the days of relationship banking are gone. You know, when you see the banks advertise you're more than a number with us, we care. It's all, I think, a bunch of BS. Excuse my language. But
I would agree.
So
I want to. Do you have any idea, either of you, on how that possibly can happen when that was such like a big question? You know, when we hit bottom in 2008, 2009, of how like really the economy needs to get, you know, sort of recharged by having the lending institutions lend to the average person,
because
and start small businesses and helping.
Todd, yeah, I know exactly how this happened, and I'll give my opinion, then I'll let Dave, of course, he's the guest, give his. But it comes from the federal regulators. Today, effectually, what's happened is the underwriting of loans is being put forth by the U.S. government and the federal regulators instead of the local bank, because the regulators come in and do these inspections on banks, a safety and soundness audit, and it all comes from them. So it's all a bunch of BS political talk that we need to put money in the hands of Joe and Mary Smith, who are starting a small business. The regulators don't want the risks. The banks are scared to take the risks. And that's where it's coming from. And it's not hitting the streets. And more and more companies, I don't want to focus on merchant cash advances and all that stuff. More and more companies are in more desperate straits for capital than before the financial crisis. But anyway, Dave, you're the guest. Why don't you give your opinion? What's mine?
Jack, I'm sorry to say it, but I've got to agree. Increasingly, you are seeing, when I will get called into a situation, my first conversation with a lender, invariably, for the last 5 years, what the regulators are going to think about this loan comes up.
Yep.
Every single conversation, it is top of mind with every commercial lender I know. If they have a problem loan, the first thing they're thinking about is not how can I work with this company to get them back on their feet. The first thing they're thinking about is, oh my God, what's going to happen in my quarterly audit?
Yeah, 100%. And Todd, by the way, that goes through the same. If the borrower is paying or not paying, it doesn't matter.
No, I get it. It's just amazing because it's so ironic that, you know, it's the huge institutions that sort of, you know, triggered the whole collapse by taking on risk and not evaluating sort of the securitized loans that were underlying, you know, these crazy, exponentially difficult to understand for the average layman derivatives that they created themselves. And then the people who get punished are people who are literally just trying to help the economy sort of from the middle market sense, not the behemoth huge companies, but people who are actually just trying to start a company, hire, you know, 10, 20 people and help our economy grow. And
they've been thrown under the bus.
They got penalized the most.
They've been thrown under the bus. But don't even get me started on that, Todd. One day we'll go out for a drink. I'll give you guys my whole feeling. Don't even get me started, especially on air about that.
Right.
I'll regret it. Dave,
let's get back to our guest.
Yeah. Dave, focus in. What do you think of the energy sector right now? And I assume you're incredibly active in this sector.
I am on the periphery in that I'm seeing a lot of activity with a lot of my key contacts. A lot of non-bank lenders are getting very active. You're seeing a lot of distressed sales, and I frankly think you're going to start seeing a lot more. Right now, I'm interim CFO of a construction company that's not in the energy space, so I'm on the sidelines until my current client situation winds down, but I very much expect that my next situation will be in the energy space. I think this is fundamentally different than the last few energy downturns we've had because this boom was so big. It touched so many additional industries. It's not just does someone have a loan out to a fracking company. It's the freight company that was hauling all the stuff. It's the construction company that was laying the pipe. It's the quarry that was selling sand in the Bakken Shale. This is going to ripple through our economy.
Oh, no, I'm in the real estate business, and by the way, there are towns across the United States that sort of were built, to support these huge, oil and fracking industries, and the towns are going to become ghost towns. I mean, it's going to look like something like Dodge City because the people are going to have no jobs and they can't support the businesses. And it's crazy.
How much of what...
Absolutely.
So, David, there's a lot of companies out there on the peripheral of the energy business who are hurting. And I guess one of the first things you do, and maybe let's talk about it, is analyze or meet with the stakeholders and say, hey, what are your goals? In other words, is the goal to liquidate? Is the goal to merge? Is the goal to whatever? But how much of that, the individual stakeholder or creditor's goals, come into play with what you do?
It's difficult, Jack. I try to keep away from just a very open-ended, what are your goals question with anyone but the client. Mm-hmm. Because the client has the right to kind of wax rhapsodic, and we can kind of go back and forth and have a bull session about where they'd like to be. Every engagement, though, I have what I call the come to Jesus speech. And the come to Jesus speech, it's not an actual written speech, but it's basically a resetting of expectations, usually around week 2 or week 3. And that's, hey, listen, I've had some time to look at your numbers. I've had some time to look at trends. This is what's practical. Turnaround and restructuring, it's Moneyball. You take the high percentage shot. So it might very well be that you're a 50-year-old family-owned business and you're the grandchild of the founder, and you want to pass this company on, and you want it to live to be for another 100 years. It may be the most practical thing is an orderly wind down that allows the founders and the owners to not lose their house. That might be the best outcome. And it's my job to work with my clients to reset their expectations around what is a realistic best outcome. And then when I'm sitting down with stakeholders, it's about, we've looked, this is what we're gunning for. This is why what we're gunning for makes sense, and this is why we think you should support us. This is what we're asking for from you, and this is what we're going to give you. And I have found those conversations with stakeholders to be a lot more practical. Because of the changes we've seen in the lending market, going into a lender, especially a money center bank, and saying, what would you guys like to happen is almost useless.
Yeah. I would imagine, though, that one of the big benefits to using you is you help the ownership crystallize their thoughts. Sometimes I would guess that, when you're in the thick of it, especially for a family business, you're not thinking clearly. And they bring in someone like you who's been doing this, who can be unemotional, have their best interests at heart, but you can present a more clear picture for them.
I think that's absolutely right. It comes down to being able to draw on nearly 20 years of experience as a change agent, being able to look objectively at the numbers and say, this is where you're at, to strip away the emotion from it. So yes, my clients do value that very much. There's always a little bit of give and take in terms of what the game plan is, but generally speaking, clients just need to hear where they're at and what can realistically happen from this point on.
Gotcha. Dave, you're fantastic, and companies need you. More companies need you. I feel bad because they go to you, I think, too late. I'm curious, what do you think, this is kind of a question, something that just popped in my head. What do you think if companies would approach you a year earlier, 9 months earlier? How many more of them would survive or would look a lot different if they got the proper help?
So many would look different, and I'll tell you how they would look different, Jack. A lot of what I do ends up being, I'll get hired by a company that I wish had called me 9 months earlier, and as a result, we will guide the company through a distressed sale. We'll clamp down on cash management, make sure they don't run out of money, retain an investment banking advisor. They'll sell the company, pay off the creditors, hopefully the ownership gets some stub money, and the company doesn't die, value is preserved. A lot of times that ends up being the game plan because that's all we've got time for. If I've got an extra 9 months, this becomes a performance improvement engagement where we can actually say, okay, how can we maximize value? How can we go out proactively and adjust our capital structure so that we can stay independent for another 3 to 5 years, so that when we sell, it's not to pay off the debt, but it's to create a windfall for equity. It would change an awful lot.
So if they called you earlier, it would turn into a bad situation to a good situation or a better situation.
Calling me earlier would allow me to turn a bad situation into a good situation. When I get called, I generally shoot for the least bad outcome. I can't guarantee that the outcome is necessarily going to be good, but it's going to be better than it would have been if I hadn't been involved.
I got you.
Right. It's all about having more choices or more options and also more time to formulate a plan for them, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's how you save money or make money.
Yep.
That's right.
Dave, you're the man. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And I'm telling you, businesses out there, when you're listening to this, give Dave a call. Dave, could you give your information out again?
Absolutely. The company is ACM Partners. My email address is david@acm-partners.com, and the website is acm-partners.com.
And Dave, one last hard-hitting question that everyone wants to know. White Sox or Cubs?
The White Sox have had a lot more success in the 10 years that I've been in Chicago. Not being a Chicago native, I just don't understand rooting for the failing team.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Dave, very much. Everyone else?
We hope you enjoyed our show. Don't forget to tune in next Thursday at 3 o'clock on 880 The Biz. Check us out on hjackmiller.com. Follow us on Facebook at Jack Miller Down to Business or on Twitter at HJackMiller.